Dear friends, this is episode number 96 of CPC. We were dealing with section 211, section 50, section 52 and section 146. I will cite one more decision with respect to section 211 and then we will go to section 212. The decision is AER 1962 Supreme Court 232 Andhra Bank Limited versus R. Srinivasan and others. Andhra Bank Limited versus R. Srinivasan and others. Person who in law represent the estate of the deceased person. Estate does not mean the whole of the estate. Even a legatee who obtains only a part of the estate of the deceased under a will can be said to represent his estate and is therefore a legal representative under section 211. So, a contention was raised that if it is only part of the estate, then it is not applicable. But that contention was negatived. Paragraph 18, I propose to read a few portions. Mr. Shastri concedes that a universal legatee would be a legal representative, and he does not challenge the person who intermeddles with even with a part of the estate. But his argument is that a legatee who obtains only a part of the estate of the deceased under a will cannot be said to represent his estate and is therefore not a legal representative under section 211. See the ingenuity of the argument of the counsel. We are not impressed by this argument. Then the Supreme Court holds further down. The whole object of widening the scope of the expression legal representative, which the present definition is intended to achieve, would be frustrated if it is held that legatees of different portions of the estate of the deceased do not fall within its purview. Logically, it is difficult to understand how such a contention is consistent with the admitted position that persons who intermeddles with the part of the estate are the legal representatives. Besides, if such a contention is accepted, it would be so easy for the estate of a deceased to escape its legitimate liability to pay the debts of the deceased debtor only if the debtor takes the precaution of making several legacies to different persons by his will. Supreme Court says a clever testator who is a judgment debtor can escape the liability by bequeathing different items to different persons and say that the legal representative, the legatees are not the legal representatives. Besides, as a matter of construction, if different intermeddlers can represent the estate of different legatees, can likewise represent it. In regard to the intermeddlers, they are said to represent the estate even though they are in possession of parcels of the estate of the deceased, and so there should be no difficulty in holding that the clause a person who in law represents the estate of the deceased person must include different legatees under the will. There is no justification for holding that the estate in the context must mean the whole of the estate. That the Supreme Court says that there is no justification for holding that the estate in the context must mean the whole of the estate. Therefore, we are satisfied that the plain construction of section 211 is against Mr. Shastri's argument, apart from the fact that considerations of logic and common sense are equally against it. Why I read this passage is that two things. One, you must also know as lawyers or law students that how an argument can be put forward, a plausible argument, though not accepted fully, it can be put forward. Two, how the Supreme Court deals with the same. Two aspects are there. So unless there are novel contentions, there will be no development of law. If we say that I have no doubt, everything is clear, no. Everything is not clear, would not be clear, should not be clear, because the change in the circumstances, either because of lapse of time and because of the change in the society, all these things are relevant in construing different provisions. Therefore, it must be flexible. That different arguments are possible and the court, how it considers it, also are relevant. Not the dictum alone. Dictum alone, I could do it in one sentence, but I am reading it only to show these aspects. Next is, we will go to section 212. What is 212? Mean profits. How does it spell? MESNE, profits. It is not Mesne profits, it is mean profits. What is mean profits? Mean profits of property means those profits which the person in wrongful possession of such property actually received or might with ordinary diligence have received therefrom, together with interest on such profits, but shall not include profits due to improvements made by the person in wrongful possession. So, mean profits is the profits which a person in wrongful possession derives actually, or which he could have derived with ordinary diligence, together with interest on such profits. Interest is part of it, but shall not include the profits due from the improvements which the person in wrongful possession made. So this is it. See, I have got a parcel of land having an extent of 10 acres. It is a garden land. I was employed in a foreign country for long. I went there, nobody to look after. My neighbor trespassed upon the property. I came back, I filed a suit for recovery of possession based on my title. I also claim mean profits. Because he is in wrongful possession, he is bound to account, he is bound to pay the profits which he has derived. Then only justice will be meted out. Otherwise, if I, after several years, if I recover possession, the vagaries of litigation, appeal, second appeal, then Supreme Court, it took 10 years or 15 years. Then during this time, I was out of possession. Should not the other party compensate me in terms of mean profits? The profits which I would have got, profits which he actually derived or which he could have derived. Then he says, no, you are entitled to recovery of possession, all right, recover possession. During all these 10 or 15 years, I was not doing any work, I was not taking any profits from the property. What is the answer? It is not a matter whether the defendant, the person in wrongful possession, actually derived it. With ordinary diligence, he could have derived if he cultivated the land or if he maintained the property as an ordinary prudent man would have done. Therefore, that also will be taken into account by the court. Otherwise, the justice will not be met. Justice will not be rendered to the person who is out of possession, who is entitled to recover possession, who is the rightful owner, and whose rights were defeated by a person in wrongful possession. These mean profits. That is to secure the ends of justice. So this is mean profits. Now we will go to some of the decisions. You will see the various contentions, various shades of meaning and all those things. So that not only that those decisions are binding on us, it is also necessary that we should comprehend to the full extent the scope and ambit of section 212. First decision is 2018 Volume 18 SCC 374, 2018, Volume 18 SCC 374. Supreme Court. Name of the case, Sardar Bhag Singh through LRs versus Vikram Sandhu. It is reported in KHC also, 2018 KHC 7393. Order 20 Rule 12, Section 212 considered. Let us see Order 20 Rule 12. Order 20 Rule 12. Decree for possession and mean profits. Where a suit is for recovery of possession of immovable property and for rent or mean profits, the court may pass a decree for possession of the property, B for the rents which have accrued on the property during the period prior to the institution of the suit, or directing an enquiry as to such rent. C. Directing an enquiry as to the rents or main profits from the institution of the suit until delivery of possession to the decree holder. The relinquishment of possession by the judgmentator with notice to the decree holder through court, or the expiration of 3 years from the date of decree, whichever first occurs. 3 clauses. Rent and mean profits from the institution of the suit until any of the 3 contingencies. What is delivery of possession to the decree holder? Decree is passed. All right, the defendant says, judgmentator says, I was defeated, I will deliver possession to you. So till then only he is liable to pay mean profits. Or the relinquishment of possession by the judgmentator with notice to the decree holder through court. That is also, I intend to relinquish my right, I am prepared to surrender, then that application is made to the court with notice to the other side. That brings an end to the wrongful possession. Then, or 3, the expiration of 3 years from the date of decree, whichever event first occurs. When a decree is passed and it has become final, then the maximum period during which a person, plaintiff decree holder, could realize the main profits from the defendant judgmentator is only for 3 years maximum. Where an enquiry is directed under clause B or clause C, a final decree in respect of the rent or main profits shall be passed in accordance with the result of such enquiry. If the court cannot straightaway fix the main profits, it can also say, I pass a preliminary decree, then this quantum will be fixed in the final decree proceedings. That also can be done. So this is the other relevant provision. So Order 20 Rule 2, Rule 12, Section 212. I will read only which is absolutely necessary. As a consequence, it follows that for a period in question, when the respondent remained in possession of the premises, such possession was not lawful. What is that? Suit for possession of the property and main profits. Then facts of the case, I will say it is clear from paragraph 9. From the facts noted above, 2 pertinent aspects become manifest, which are as under. 1. The suit filed by the respondent for specific performance of agreement stood dismissed way back in the year 2005, and the said decree has attained finality. On the contrary, suit filed by the appellant for possession was decreed by the trial court by allowing the application of the appellant filed under Order 12 Rule 6 CPC. Order 12 Rule 6. It is not Order 12 Rule 6, it is wrong. It is wrong. Judgment on admissions. I do not know whether on facts it is so. Anyhow, we will skip that. It is not necessary. From the aforesaid, it is clear that not only the respondent was held not entitled to specific performance of the agreement, the possession of the premises with him was held to be wrongful. Two suits were filed. The plaintiff filed a suit for possession. The defendant filed his suit for specific performance of agreement to sell. The defendant's suit was dismissed, and that is A and B. A filed a suit against B for recovery of possession. B filed a suit against A for specific performance of an agreement to sell. That B's suit was dismissed. That means that B is not entitled to get the decree, the property executed in his favor, assigned in his favor by way of specific performance. On the other hand, A's suit is decreed. That means he is entitled to get back possession of the property with all the consequential reliefs. From the aforesaid, it is clear that not only the respondent was held not entitled to specific performance of the agreement, the possession of the premises with him was held to be wrongful, which led to passing of the decree of possession in favor of the appellant. As a consequence, it follows that for the period in question, when the respondent remained in possession of the premises, such possession was not lawful. It is on this basis that the appellant had also claimed mean profits in the suit filed by him. These mean profits were even granted by the trial court, that is the learned single judge of the High Court. This part of the decree has been set aside by the division bench in appeal on the ground that no evidence was laid by the appellant. Now the Supreme Court said, exercising its powers, that is which the other courts may not have. Para 11, it is not correct. It is correct that the appellant had not led any evidence on the issue of mean profits, though such an issue was specifically framed. However, in the interest of justice, the appellant could have been granted some reasonable compensation for the wrongful possession of the premises from the respondent herein. 5 lakhs was ordered. 5 lakhs. Respondent agreed to pay 5 lakhs to the appellant. And the appellant was not prepared to accept that only 5 lakhs. The Supreme Court directed the respondent to deposit that amount in court. That is because of the powers of the Supreme Court under Article 141, 142 of the Constitution, which the other courts may not do. Next is 2007 2 KLT 547. Parallel citation 2007 KHC 3489. Janardhanan versus KT Vijayan. The decision was rendered by me. The realization of mean profits in terms of paddy would be realized only by claiming the value of paddy at the prevailing rate when the judgmentator was liable to deliver the paddy. Value of the paddy at the time of passing the order by the executing court need not be taken into account. Now the defendant judgmentator was directed to deliver a certain quantity of paddy. How paddy is to be, how the execution petition is to be filed? Not for delivering paddy in specie, but for payment of the amount representing the value of paddy. Value of paddy to be determined at what point of time? Whether at the time of decree, whether at the time of filing the suit, whether at the time of passing the decree, or whether at the time of filing the execution petition, or whether at the time of actual delivery, actual payment of the money, which is the relevant date. If it is flexible, if it is not certain, what will happen? The decree holder will claim the value of paddy which the paddy fetched the highest rate. The judgmentator will say that he will pay the price of the paddy at the time when it was very low. It is common knowledge that the name of these paddy, arecanut, coconut and other agricultural producers vary from time to time. There may be times when the value goes very high. There may be times when the value may be less. So what is a point of time with reference to which the value of this article should be assessed? There I relied on a full bench decision of the Kerala High Court. In 1954, Kerala Law Times, 463. Name of the case is Ausep and others versus Souriyar Thomman, Souriyar, Souriyar, Thomman and others. This is a decision which was relied on, 1954. See, if possible, you must get that decision and read it. It is very difficult to some extent. It takes time. It runs to several pages. And you have to carefully read it, carefully. Then the principles, how beautifully the full bench has decided that those principles, you will understand. Nirak rate of paddy, that was a heading. That is a heading. And various contentions, how the full bench dealt with that. So, apart from reading this decision, even if you do not read this decision, you must read the full bench decision in 1954. The principles are very, very, very lucidly stated, but very difficult to comprehend the facts, the contentions, etc. But once you do it, it will be very clear. Now, paragraph 5 and 7, paragraph 5 of the judgment. There the 1954 KLT is quoted, one page fully quoted. The contention raised by the revision petitioner is that the rate adopted by the executing court for paddy is low. It was contended that the main profits ordered to be paid to the revision petitioner were not paid by the respondents in time, and therefore they are liable to pay the amounts, taking into account the value of the paddy at the time of payment. That is a contention. I think the time is running out. We will stop here. We will see this decision in the next episode. Thank you.